Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Do you know what happens to a movie patron who doesn't listen to Reviews Without Remorse first? Same thing that happens to anyone. Jesus, that doesn't make any sense. I'm David. This is episode 119. And in this show, we will discuss, well, Joe is actually away on vacation, and there have been a couple of trailers that came out this week, but I don't feel right discussing them solo, so I'm going to hold off on them until Joe comes back for next week's show. Instead, we're just going to go right to the review of the X-Men.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now seeing the beginnings of another stage of human evolution.
In every human being,
there's not many people that'll understand people like us.
there exists the genetic code.
You'll be safe here.
What kind of place is this?
You're not the only one with gifts.
For mutation.
The truth is, mutants are very real. And they are among us. We must know who they are, and above all, what they can do.
In a world where mutants exist and are discriminated against, two groups form for an inevitable clash: the Supremacist Brotherhood and the Pacifist X-Men. Written by David Hayter, story by Tom DeSanto and Bryan Singer, based on characters created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, directed by Bryan Singer, X-Men. Interesting story. Did you know that Dougray Scott was originally supposed to play Wolverine?
I sure did. Boy, talk about, I'll bet he's kicking himself. I'll bet he's been kicking himself for decades.
You know what's funny? It's a case of Mission Impossible again. He was working on Mission Impossible 2, and the time ran over, and he couldn't make the commitment, so that's when they brought in Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Yes, what might have been for old Dougray Scott.
Now, this is a very interesting movie because this is now 19 years ago this movie came out. 19 years ago! My son wasn't even born then.
Wow.
Okay?
Then I noticed, by the way, when you watch the movie, there's a graphic of Manhattan, and there's the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
This is pre-9/11. That's how old this movie is.
Yeah, that could be a little tough to take. Same with Men in Black. My son just recently watched Men in Black, and there's that one scene on the New Jersey Turnpike where you see the towers in the background. It still hurts, man. It still hurts. But that aside, let's talk about X-Men. Let's talk about X-Men. You know what I want to do? Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to get this out of the way. Costume Commander. Let's hear your thoughts.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, it's funny, as I was watching this today, I was saying to myself, like, do I even mention this or do I just let it go? Because I do sort of feel like as much as 99% of the time, I'm usually rooting for the original costumes, et cetera, I totally sympathize with this moment in time where it would have been hard to pull off. I kind of really acknowledge that in this film. I mean, when you watch this movie today, it really does, you really do sympathize that this was an effort to make a superhero film in a time where effects were not up to where we are now by a long shot. Budgets were not, I mean, you can kind of tell the budget for this is not much. Yeah. There's a moment where they're fighting in the lobby of the Statue of Liberty. And it just looks like, I mean, I kind of feel like a fight in a Western movie in a bar was on par with this. I mean, this is supposed to be a superhero battle, and I'm basically watching every display get knocked over, people falling, or thrown into a glass display here and there. It's so low budget that it's hard not to watch this movie with a level of compassion for what filmmakers were dealing with at that time.
Right.
Do I think that they could have pulled off the costumes? Some, but you know what? I get it. Let's not even try it. Wolverines, I mean, even to this day, they've been wildly hesitant to put Wolverine in anything other than a tank top and jeans.
Right.
So I sympathize. You know, I really can't give them a hard time for this one. I do remember when there's a shot of Storm coming up the elevator where at least she had a bit of a cape that was sort of blowing.
A small cape.
And I remember thinking like, wow, finally Storm looks kind of like Storm, you know, in that shot. Yeah, so my costume commander analness, I'll sort of put on hold this week because, again, I get it. The timing was wrong. Going forward, I sincerely hope that the Marvel Cinematic Universe embraces the characters in their original costume. And by the way, I've seen really good video essays about this, where it's kind of odd where the some of the early superhero movies and some today, by the way, are still shying away from color. And it's weird because there's so many films that embrace color, you know, and like Guardians of the Galaxy, they've definitely gotten the memo. Color is good. You know, but when you look back on these kind of costumes and similar films doing the same thing, and even the villains, they say like, you know, why are the villains always gray in superhero movies? You know, so again, going forward, I really hope they embrace the original costumes, but in this one, I'll give it a pass.
That's very magnanimous of you, sir.
Took me 5 minutes to make that point. I apologize, but point being, it's okay.
It's very magnanimous of you, sir. And honestly, it needed to be pointed out. I mean, this is a different time frame when it comes to comic book movies. At the time, maybe the Batman movies were like kind of the big thing, and they were starting to get in. They had just like dwindled down to this awful end of campiness beyond campy. Like the movies, the Batman movies became campier than the '60s TV show, and that '60s TV show basically was born on camp.
Yeah.
So this was really the first attempt to try to do a more serious comic book movie in the vein of, say, like, well, I guess the closest thing I could think of is Blade. Not many people remember the first Blade movie. It came out, I want to say, in 99 or 97 or something like that. And that took its source material very seriously and made kind of a dark and gritty comic book movie. And, you know, tried to incorporate it into the real world. Along comes Bryan Singer, and he's really trying to ground it in real world, to make it seem real. I mean, you know, we're talking about a case where a guy can shoot red lasers out of his eyes, a woman that can control weather, and a guy who can, you know, pull claws out. And yet, he feels like the most unrealistic part was the costumes. I guess I can kind of sort of understand that. At the time, Cyclops was wearing basically a unitard with yellow gym pants or whatever they were, and yellow boots. And then you had Wolverine, who had his yellow and black, or sometimes yellow and blue little outfit with a strange little mask. Which, you know, I appreciate that at least they tried to get the hairstyle correctly on that one. Yeah. But yeah, no, this is definitely a different time and place in the world of comic book movies. Now, that aside, let's talk about the characters and the plot. Now, the basic gist is that Magneto wants to make humans into mutants so that everybody will be on the same side, you know? And Stan Lee himself has gone on to say that, like, if you wanted to compare the characters, you know, Magneto is Malcolm X and Professor X is Martin Luther King. Both fighting for the same thing, but in different respects. Yeah. And I kind of feel that in that respect, they got that, and I think they translated that pretty well into this movie. And you can also give credit to the outstanding Ian McKellen as Magneto, and the superb Patrick Stewart as Professor X. Yeah. You know, they wound up, this is the movie that they became like best friends on. And they've been friends ever since. Like frickin' Patrick Stewart was the best man at Ian McKellen's wedding and everything like that.
Nice.
So I felt that worked really, really nicely. The problem is that the movie really only works character-wise, personally, for 3 characters. Professor X, Magneto, and Wolverine. They're the only 3 characters that get any real depth. Everybody else is just window dressing. And to me, as an X-Men fan, that was kind of a shame.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think this film suffers from well, let me put it another way. The predicament that this film is in is similar to the predicament of, say, Justice League, where they're doing an ensemble film as opposed to doing various solos, etc. I mean, the X-Men is a group comic.
Right.
So it would be akin to starting off with the Avengers, which I think anybody who pays attention to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, etc., would agree. The Avengers work because they gave most of the characters their due in solo films. This one did not have that luxury. They just started off with the X-Men, so you had to figure out which characters are you going to sympathize with, who are going to lead us through this journey. I kind of find that Wolverine is sort of an odd choice. It works. I think they make it work. He is the one. He's the Luke Skywalker of the story. He's the one who will lead you through this journey. And again, he's kind of an odd choice for that. You could also argue that Rogue also kind of serves that point, but again, just does not get the spotlight that Wolverine gets. Now, Rogue, obviously, I was watching her today and thinking to myself, from a comic standpoint, it's kind of a travesty.
Mm-hmm.
But you can understand why they did what they did. Rogue from the comic was wildly confident, strong character, adult character. Here they sort of kind of meshed her with the Kitty Pryde character to make her the young one, the youngin of the group who comes in. But they went with Rogue because her mutant power is so sympathetic in the way they play it. They wanted somebody who was a sympathetic character. Being a mutant is tough. Here's a girl who cannot literally touch another human being without causing harm. So the reality is, I kind of feel like I understand the choice, and it was a wise decision to do that. Because again, with her and Wolverine, you do get sympathetic characters, and Wolverine waking up in the mansion and meeting everybody and having things explained to him essentially makes him the main character almost, and again, it's clunky for damn sure. But again, like I said, I am very sympathetic to what the filmmakers had to deal with at that time, so I kind of get it. Is it the only choice? Is it the best choice? Yeah, we can argue that. But again, it's so hard to kind of be fair to this film while still having the hindsight, of what we have today, what's been accomplished in superhero films.
And you're 100% correct with all of that, with the choice of replacing the Kitty Pryde character, so to speak, with the Rogue character. There's also a lot of history to the Rogue character before she got to that point of being a very confident woman. And I guess they couldn't, and there was really no way to really portray that, I believe, for the initial start of a movie series that, at the time was still a niche. And the other thing I'm going to agree with you about, it's very difficult. It really feels like Monday morning quarterbacking on a 20-year-old movie that basically started the ball rolling on everything that we have today.
Yeah, exactly.
Did it do it in a great way? You know what? If you had asked me in 2000, I might feel differently. But, in today's environment, it's very hard to detach from, just recently seeing Endgame versus, this movie 20 years earlier, which obviously it kills me watching this movie, just thinking to myself, what budget did they give these people? There's very little in the way of set pieces. The fight scenes are okay. They're not great.
Yeah.
I don't feel like they really developed the character. I feel bad for James Marsden. I kind of always liked Scott Summers. I always liked Cyclops, and I kind of felt like he got the short end of the stick here.
Big time.
Huge time.
Yeah.
And Marsden's a good actor. If you ever want to see Marsden as a really fine actor, see the TV show Westworld.
Sure.
So it's not like the guy doesn't have chops or anything like that. But, because of the nature of this movie, they had to really only focus on a couple of people. Now, the smart thing in focusing on the relationship between Charles and Magneto, that works. I like that. I felt anything where the two of them were interacting in any way from the first shot to the end, worked. And the opening, I happen to feel that at the time, this was one of the best comic book movie openings ever.
Yeah.
Because they didn't open with any flash. They didn't, they introduced us to young Magneto in a concentration camp. And it's like, this is a comic book movie, and they're throwing in some real-world example here to explain the motivation of this character. I love that bit of characterization. It is one of my favorite shots in the movie. So good that they wound up cribbing it for X-Men First Class.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly, I agree with you 1,000% that was a great moment, and, I kind of almost resent the idea that, there was sort of a little bit of should a comic book movie really be talking about, well, yeah. Why not? I mean, I kind of feel like it's completely fair game. It's done with respect. And boy, is literally from that moment on, like the next shot you get after that is Eric Lenscher walking out of the hearing in Washington.
Right.
You know what's going through that guy's head. You know his motivation. You know exactly where that character stands at this point. Like, and I can't think of any better way to send that message home than the opening shot that they used. I mean, that really did set that character in motion.
Yeah, and made him completely a sympathetic villain, which is what you need in a comic book movie.
Yes.
You have to. You can't. The villain can't be two-dimensional. Whenever the villain has been two-dimensional, it's been weak.
Right.
Even in the great and wonderful first Iron Man movie. The fact that Obadiah Stane was just trying to take over his company and then put on a bigger Iron Man suit, okay, fine, seems kind of lazy, whatever. This type of depth in a villain should be like a benchmark. I mean, the only other person that is greater than Magneto from this movie, I would say, would be Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor as a villain. At the time.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And honestly, again, when you hear the discussions between Charles and Eric, when Charles is trying to reason with Eric and saying that there's hope, yada, yada, don't give up on them. Again, coming from a scene like that, you can completely understand why Magneto is a villain who will not be reasoned with. So I really do think that was a superb decision to do that.
Well, let's talk about some other decisions. The casting of Halle Berry as Storm, the casting of Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, the casting of Rebecca Romijn as Mystique. Let's go through some of the side characters real quick. Now, we had our discussion last week about Halle Berry.
Yeah. I'll just say this. Isn't it cute that she's kind of, still trying to do a bit of an accent? Like, I kind of forgot she was even bothering with this. And it's like, oh, yeah. Literally, like, just a movie or two in, she's just going to be like, screw it. I can't do an accent. I'll just do it regular.
Yeah. Yes. Great choices there. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really blame. I'm going to put a little bit of blame on her for that really awful. What was that? South African? I'm not even sure what the hell type of accent that was supposed to be.
I don't know what the hell that was supposed to be. I really don't. It's just kind of just weird.
Yeah, but the other side of the coin is like they introduce her, and it's weird. It's like they're trying to say, oh, you should know who this is. It's like, no, nobody knows who this is.
Right.
Okay. Unless they're a comic book fan, nobody knows who this is. So I kind of felt in a small way that was kind of unfair for her. Same with Cyclops, but we already discussed Cyclops. And to me, the real criminal here is, again, the undercutting of the Jean Grey character, especially when she's going to become a huge focus from the second and then eventual third movie. You know, what did she get? She got to make googly eyes at Hugh Jackman through 80% of the movie.
Right, yeah. Again, you know, remember when we talked about the first Spider-Man? You know, I remember talking about Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man, and I said, you know, the difficulty is that, again, there's a lot that they have to sort of get into this first movie. Or at least I think they do. And in some ways, you know, they do, because, again, you're not going to get an X-Men Part 2 unless X-Men Part 1 works. So you really have to establish a lot in this first film. So yeah, it is mildly frustrating that you sort of get this, you know, this weird, awkward, like the kind of competitiveness between Cyclops and Wolverine. Again, that pops up in the first few seconds that they're in the same room, and you're kind of going like, why? Why is Wolverine? Why does he have a problem with Cyclops? He literally just met this guy. Doesn't know any. He hasn't said 2 words yet. So it's weird. Like, so they're trying to shove a lot into a small amount of time. So yeah, this kind of, you know, sexual tension between Jean and Wolverine, it just feels a little forced. It doesn't feel very natural.
Right. And it's a shame too, because the history of Wolverine and Cyclops' you know, distaste for each other took a while to actually happen in the comics and made sense at the time. But regardless of their distaste for each other, there was always, like, Logan, Wolverine, at least, you know, was like, Scott, I hate you, you're a dick, but you're in charge, so I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
That was the undercurrent in the comics. No matter what had happened, there was always that thing there. There's none of that here. There's like animosity from the word get-go. I mean, hi, I'm Scott Summers. I put out my hand, and Wolverine gives him the little eye.
Right.
And like half a second later, he's grabbing him by the lapel, saying, "You want to get out of my way?"
Really?
And I'm like, really? That was fast.
Right, exactly. Like, what is that about? I mean, it was right. And then he's talking to Jean later. He's like, "Oh, what are you gonna tell me not to talk to your girl, Cyclops?" Like, he's making fun of his name and everything. Like, it just, it really, again, just felt very shoehorned in. And honestly, you probably didn't even need to go there with this one. You probably could have just left that alone.
Yeah. I mean, the movie itself ran about an hour and 37 minutes, give or take.
Yeah.
So it was they're really trying very hard to pack way too much into this than you really needed to.
Yeah.
I don't think they needed to. I think that they could have at least shown, like, the slightest flirtation between the two of them, but not get into the whole Scott dynamic until the second movie.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact it felt like they went into, like, weird loose ends, because at one point they're arguing after Rogue's been taken, and Professor X says to the two of them, you know, let's resolve this.
Settle this. Yeah.
Let's settle this. Where did that go?
Right. Well, I think
because the next shot is him going into Cerebro and getting knocked out.
Yeah. I thought I heard. I feel like you're the one who told me that there was they were going to do a scene in the Danger Room.
Yeah.
But
that was
again,
the original
because
plan.
of budget constraints, it just didn't happen. But the line is still there. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't leave that type of dangle there.
Yeah.
It would have been the perfect time to introduce the Danger Room. It's like, this is the training room, you know, one-on-one, blah, 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 blah. And it would have been nice to see the two of them go at each other in that way and just get it out and over with. It was, you know, I feel like the Jean Grey character got a little bit, you know, pushed aside. Rogue got a decent backstory, but not close enough to the comic book to really satify me. Sabretooth got mangled. Just, growling all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, that was, yeah, he was pretty bad, honestly. Like, every time I saw him and they would throw in like an actual lion roar or something like that, it was like really kind of just dumb. But that's, that was, again, one of the big limitations of this film. I remember thinking, like, my feeling was that they chose villains based on their powers, based on what they felt they could get away with CGI wise. You know, Sabretooth was the big, you know, Wolverine villain at that time. So, I guess we got to have him. And by the way, there was the introduction of the introduction when Wolverine first meets Xavier. That conversation is very clunky. And this is what he kept saying. This is Scott Summers, also called Cyclops, and this is Jean Grey, also called. I remember thinking, why is he saying also called? Like, I mean, that felt so clunky to me. You know, I kind of felt like there was a much more organic way to kind of do that. Their superhero names. I honestly, whatever. I wish that was written a little bit better. And then he said something like, and then there's a mutant also called Magneto, and he uses someone also called Sabretooth. And I remember Logan going, Sabretooth? And I was like, yeah, your brother. But seriously, I felt like they just picked these villains based on what they thought they can get away with special effects wise. Because honestly, Toad, I thought was just so weird. Like such a weird choice. He was handled very weird. And all he was this guy with this big long CGI tongue for one of those multi-use tongues, And I was like, I kind of that stuff really didn't work at all for me. But I get it.
They wasted most of their money on Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, and here it is, the beginning of the Mystique era of the X-Men. From second tier stepmom to Rogue to to CGI. Holy smokes, is she really naked? Right. / super fighter that could beat up everybody.
Yeah.
This was the movie that did that. And nothing against the actress. I thought, Rebecca Romijn did fine with what she had and everything like that. But the biggest problem is the lack of depth. There was not a lot of depth in any of these characters. Sabretooth roared, Toad used his tongue, Mystique, shapeshifted and was a freaking ninja of some sort.
Yeah, and ironically, this Mystique, and you kind of touched on it, but I'm saying to myself, is this character so popular just because he's essentially running around naked without clothes? Because I mean, it's kind of weird that incarnation of Mystique now is like basically taken over. Now in the modern days, we have to deal with Jennifer Lawrence. We have to deal with her ego because they got her to play this character, and now she has to be like the lead of every damn movie. It's mildly frustrating, and it's so odd that it kind of came from these sort of humble origins.
The choices made I don't even really blame the filmmakers. I feel like David Hayter, I read the original screenplay for this, and it was much tighter. It was much better drawn out. I don't even blame Bryan Singer. I blame the studio. I feel like they kind of just said, no, this is your budget and that's it. And you've got X amount of days to shoot it, figure it out.
Right.
It's like, we don't really believe in this project, but screw it.
And Wolverine is the most popular, so he has to be the main character.
Exactly. Which, that's maybe the only thing that they semi got right, because it is true, he is the most popular character. You need to have him at the forefront, but it was almost too much. He got the forefront. Like Charles and Eric getting the forefront makes sense because they are the core of what makes this conflict.
Agreed.
But not giving everybody equal time and focusing mostly on Wolverine, and I'm a huge Wolverine fan. I own the comic, his first appearance comic. I paid $200 for it. It's worth a lot more today, but that's another story. Even I'm saying to myself, too much Wolverine. Everybody else got shortchanged because of it.
Yeah, but honestly, my big problem with Wolverine as the lead character, like I said before, I mean, I sort of likened him to being the Luke Skywalker of this story because he's the one who leads us through the journey. But honestly, I think Wolverine works best as the Han Solo of the story. I really feel like, honestly, Cyclops to me is the guy, and it's not a perfect way to go, but he should be the lead of the story. I mean, to me, he's the Captain America of the X-Men. So yeah, it's very frustrating that he is so just pushed off to the side. Wolverine is now front and center and forced to take the lead character. I mean, he's already he's the animal with the heart of gold. you know, like right from the get-go. Like when Rogue is in the back of the truck and he pulls Rogue, first he throws her out. He's like, oh boy, and he has to pick her back up and give her a ride. Because again, you know, because he's got the heart of gold. But this is something we should be learning about him over time and over, you know, a distance and over some trials. You know, I kind of feel like having him so upfront and on the nose, no one is really served by doing that. And honestly, I did sort of laugh too, by the way, as I was watching this one, and I kind of was like, wow, I forgot how long ago and how young everyone is. And I'm looking at Wolverine, and I'm thinking to myself, he's almost like the teen heartthrob version of Wolverine in this. Like,
yes, indeed.
You know, I'm like, he's so young, and he's just so handsome looking, and it's almost like a tween version of X-Men with this. But yeah, again, like I said, I mean, these, like, I feel like everything I say in this review is going to be followed up with, but I understand because that was the time, but they were doing what they could with what they had. But again, with that disclaimer aside, yeah, I kind of feel like there was a better route to take with Wolverine. And again, going forward, I hope they sort of, you know, can do things a little more planned out story-wise.
Well, now out there in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, you know what? I'll say this much. I wouldn't want to be the guy to have to fill Mr. Jackman's shoes.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And honestly,
for a last-minute replacement, he kind of worked out.
In spades, yeah. I mean, Hugh Jackman's whole entire career is based on this. I mean, first of all, how many times has he actually played this character now in a film? I mean, it's kind of amazing. And by the way, I also, as I was watching this today, and as I'm sort of, you know, doing a lot of eye rolling at a lot of parts, the fact that this version of the X-Men has had such longevity. I mean, this, you got to figure the group of characters we're seeing in this film, which is, like you said, 19 years ago, we saw them again as recently as Days of Future Past, you know, which was a great film.
Right.
You know, it's even referenced in, I mean, when we watch Logan, and Logan seems so far removed from this that it just feels like a whole different genre altogether. I mean, it essentially is, basically. But it feels like a world apart. I mean, I love in Logan where they even sort of make a reference to the Statue of Liberty, and he's like, "Oh, that was a long time ago," and it kind of makes you go, "Oh yeah, wow." The journey from there to here, you know, is kind of amazing. So again, you really do, as much as we sort of look back on this first one with kind of some groans here and there, it does say something that it really had the staying power that it did.
Agreed. He took the part and he owned it. And I kind of feel like he got a lot of what makes Wolverine who he is. Was he 100% right for the part? I don't know. I'm never going to really say for sure. But he is now the only representation of Wolverine that the general public knows. And we could have done worse. We could have done a lot worse, frankly. And yeah, you know, now that you mentioned about Logan, it's like, holy smokes. I almost want to watch Logan again. Just to just to see the dichotomy.
Yeah.
It's such a huge distance. I mean, Logan came out, what, 2018, 2017? I want to say 2017. 17 years later, still playing the same damn part 9 times. According to the IMDb, he played the part 9 times across 9 different movies.
Yeah.
I don't think any other actor has done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing. In fact, you have me sort of trying to remember now what the movies are to make 9, because I mean there was 3 X-Men films. There were 3 standalone Wolverines, right, including Logan. Yep. You had Days of Future Past. Oh, he does appear in First Class. Oh, and he appears again
in Apocalypse.
Right. Okay, you're right. Oh my God. It is kind of.
And whoa! I'm wrong. 10. Logan.
We said that.
Oh, that was 3. Yeah. 3. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. You know what? It's weird that I separated it from that because Logan really is its own thing, and still, I feel one of the best comic book movies in the past 5 years, easily. Still.
Yeah, I would put that honestly. I would easily put that in my top 10 superhero movies of all time, frankly, and possibly top 5 even. but that's as tall an order as that might seem. And I'm talking about all, comic book movies, superhero movies. But yeah.
I don't know, man. If your top one is Superman, which I assume it is.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I would definitely put that up there as well. Well, you know what? We're gonna have to do that some other time. We'll have to do like a whole comic book retrospect
for another day. That would take a lot of.
Okay, so they had the cut budget, the bad sets, the neutered characters. Movie made bank at the box office, and had, of course, the first Stan Lee cameo.
Well, I would take issue with that being the first one, but yeah, it was certainly there, and probably was this before the first Spider-Man?
Yes,
it was.
First Spider-Man wasn't until 2002 or 2003. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the whole thing really does. When you watch it now, it is very. I'll say this: it's hard to get excited. See, it's funny too, and I kind of feel like, even as I was watching this film today, I really kind of started to ask myself how I was going to score this, because again, I find myself often saying, I'm not I'm just going to score this as it is and not take into account where it stands in the bigger picture and the things that were affecting it at the time. Then again, I feel like I completely did that with Endgame and basically said as much as I was doing this. I said, I'm giving this a perfect 10. Not that this is a perfect 10 kind of a film. It's not the Citizen Kane of superhero films, but I did have to just acknowledge that it served as such a wonderful wrap up to an entire 10-year journey, and it delivered I think one of the most satisfying conclusions that anybody could possibly imagine. I mean, it had plot holes, but I'm going to ignore them and give it a 10. So I am kind of wondering how I'm going to score this one, because again, it on its own, it's kind of tough. It's almost a tough watch in many ways, because it just reeks of, oh boy, I wish they could have done this differently. Oh, I wish they could have done that better. Oh my God, these characters, these villains are just so goofy. On one hand, it had the wisdom to really go after. I do feel the film hits the core of what X-Men is. Again, it's not just a superhero film. It is very much about mutants, about being accepted and or being discriminated against for who you are. I mean, they do hit themes very solidly.
Yes.
But again, it's offset by just kind of, Toad with his tongue and Halle Berry going, do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? So there's so many cringy things about it that it's a really kind of a potpourri of good and bad.
It feels like it was having an identity crisis. Well,
it didn't have an identity yet, so yeah. I mean,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's why I said it was an identity crisis. From the original script that Hayter wrote, and David Hayter is a huge comic book fan.
Yeah.
So he wrote a really good original script that managed to balance all that very nicely. This movie suffers because there was no confidence at the time that this would be anything more than, maybe a one-shot deal and maybe get a couple of bucks off of it. And hey, it lets us keep the licensing rights to this X-Men thing should we ever decide to do something with it in the future. It really kind of felt like do you know the story of the Fantastic Four by oh goodness. Oh, please.
Which one? The most recent?
No. The original Fantastic
Harvey
Four
Korman?
by not Harvey Korman. Harvey
Roger
Korman. Roger Corman. That's whose
I
name
still
I
got
couldn't
Tim
think
Conway
of.
on my brain from last week. Yes, Roger Corman. Sorry.
All right. Do you know the story behind the Roger Corman Fantastic Four?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I know this was essentially made to hold the rights, and it really was never planned. It was never going to get a theatrical release.
Correct. In some ways, this is almost like a slightly bigger budget version of that, because there are things hinted at but unrealized. There are moments spoken about but never shown. That crazy-ass line that Halle Berry throws out to Toad at the end, that was supposed to be the third use of that. Like, Toad was supposed to have, like, a smart-ass version of that he would say before he would crunch people or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was cut out of the movie. But they still kept her part of that line in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just... There was absolutely... The only people that had confidence in this, I think, was Hader, most of the actors, and Singer. They believed in this project, and they tried their best to make it work. And they succeed in spite, but still not completely successful.
Well,
still,
you know what? I'll take the torch there and say, yes, I would use the word succeed. I believe that they succeeded in creating something. Like I said, I mean, look at Josh Trank's Fantastic Four. It is so abysmal that you'll never see another one. So that one is a failure. This film, again, for all of its limitations, was successful enough to blossom into a gigantic franchise. I mean, again, we're talking how many of these films later, and again, we still had this core cast as recently as Days of Future Past, which is great. So yeah, it worked. Like I said, hindsight is 20/20, so it's very easy to go back and pick on things, but they did create something. I mean, seriously, this was kind of like a Frankenstein's monster, and they put it together. They jolted it with lightning, hoping it would take life, and it did, and it was allowed to go forward and become something even bigger than this. So you really have to give them credit for that. One last little comment, by the way. I noticed for the first time ever that, you know, when Wolverine first bursts in on Charles Xavier teaching the class, and you see the kid sitting there, and one is obviously Bobby, the Iceman. One is obviously Kitty Pryde because she runs through the thing, even though she'll be reclassed later. But I noticed for the first time that the girl sitting at the far left is meant to be Jubilee.
Right.
By her clothing. I never noticed that before.
They tried like 3 times to get Jubilee into these movies.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think don't they do it again later in Apocalypse? You see her.
I think actually Days of Future Past, they go to the mall with her or something like that.
I'm pretty sure there's Apocalypse. Yeah, that's Apocalypse you're thinking of.
Maybe
it was the third
that's
one.
That's right. No, yeah, you're right. Apocalypse. I'm sorry.
But so yeah, like I said, I mean, there's as much as there is to kind of complain about this film, there's absolutely a lot to celebrate.
We're not what you think. Not all of us.
Who are you people? What kind of place is this?
I'm Professor Charles Xavier. I built this school where mutants could learn to focus their powers in a positive way, and also learn that mankind was not evil, just uninformed.
But how much of a celebration are we talking, Joe?
Very powerful mutant.
Out of 10, how much of a celebration are we giving this movie?
Yeah,
would you like
10.
me to go first?
Huh?
Or would you like to go first? Would you like me to go first, or would you like to go first? Gentleman's choice.
You take it this time, my friend.
Okay. When you break it down, every single moment of action in this movie felt bland. And I couldn't find myself excited at all about any of it. The first introduction to Wolverine in the cage, that was good. You know, him taking out the shotgun, that was also good. And even to a lesser extent, when they get attacked by Sabretooth in the truck and everything like that, I thought that was good. But every other action beat from that point forward just didn't feel right. Didn't work for me. And from what I understand, it became the reason why, for the action sequences, Bryan Singer wound up going to a second unit director for X2, and I think that shows. When we get to X2, we'll discuss that even more. Because of the dryness of the action beats, it kind of was a downer for me. It could have been a lot better. I didn't feel like the fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth was all that great. It was, whatever. And that kind of took me out of it. You take the characters that I've known for years, and having them be, very paint by numbers and very stiff. I feel bad for James Marsden and how short-shanked and the sticking of Cyclops continues as the movies evolve, as the movies go forward.
Possibly even worse, but good.
Yeah. And I feel terrible about that. It's such a great freaking character that has not had his day in court. Weirdly, I'm kind of hoping that in Dark Phoenix they finally give him some freaking respect. Which they're going to need to do because he is the emotional core for Jean. That is, if they don't do that right, not like it matters, but whatever. I'm kind of hopeful for that, but I'm talking about this here. I got off a little bit for a second there. I can't, even today, I can't forgive these shortcomings. How many times have we gone back to movies from even earlier than this? With budgets maybe not as big, but along those same lines. I could still feel excited about action scenes from Die Hard, okay? And Die Hard didn't have that huge a budget either. It really didn't. And, some of the special effects kind of, don't really translate well, but screw it. It's Die Hard. It works. So I can't really say, well, it was that time or that place. I can't really, I'll forgive the costumes and I'll forgive, a bunch of things, but I can't forgive the fact that the action was dull, that some characters got short-staffed. However, after that huge preamble, it's still a strong seed that blossomed into something pretty damn good. Had some missteps, but it did still blossom into something pretty good. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I bet you thought I was going for a 5.
No, I had a hunch it was going to be a 7. And the reason being is because I also gave it a 7. We're getting so predictable, frankly.
Not true. We disparitied on John Wick 2 and 3.
This is true. This is true.
So we're not completely predictable. Yeah. But go on.
Yeah, but you're. I mean, again, it really does. I feel like this is a perfect example of a 7 kind of a film where it's it's perfectly serviceable but not remarkable. It deserves all the accolades in the world, like you said, for being the seed that blossomed into something. And again, these films, the first Spider-Man again comes to mind, where they are kind of these sort of Frankensteins, these old beater of a cars that you throw new motors in and you try to make them work and you jumpstart them and they come to life and and great. Again, but it doesn't mean they're pretty. Yeah, so again, it's for what it is. I mean, the filmmakers deserve tons, and I mean this sincerely. The filmmakers in this case deserve tons of credit for what they were able to accomplish with what they had. Again, the cast, for the most part, is pretty spot on. Everybody's here to work, and so much of it works, and sometimes even in spite of itself. But again, it blossomed into an amazing 20-year-long franchise. I'm not sure what year was this film again? 2000.
2000.
Right.
Yep.
So I mean, with Dark Phoenix, coming up, and we're literally talking about, just shy of 20 years in this own universe. So it really did blossom into something amazing and given us nearly 20 years of entertainment. Some great, some not great, a lot of things in between. So I get, but again, when you watch it, it's just kind of So with that in mind, I think a 7 is fair, with a big hearty thank you for what's to come.
100% agreed on that. And who asked you?
Where was I gonna go?
I realize there's a lot, there's a lot we can hit.
Yeah, Halle Berry's accent was one possibility. Yeah, there was actually a couple things I was floating around with this. Now I kind of forgot where I was gonna go.
Would you care for me to go first, maybe, while you put some thought into it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the "do you know what happens to a toad" line is terrible. Yeah, the massacring of the Sabretooth character, weirdly, as bad as X-Men Origin Wolverine is, I really did like Liv Schreiber's interpretation of Sabretooth. When we get to that, we'll discuss that more. But really, the thing that really just got under my craw that I just couldn't let go and still can't let go to this very day, Mystique is a shapeshifter. How the hell does she produce knives?
I said the same thing when I saw it this time.
That made zero sense. And, it wasn't even like that it was like just like an extension of her skin to try to fool or anything like that. Because at one point, she cuts like a rope. So somehow she's able to make knives that could stab. Because at one point, I think she even slashes Wolverine and everything like that. So that really just took me out of it like nobody's business.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I literally had the same exact thought when I saw it, because I remember thinking, well, I suppose if she shapeshifts into somebody wearing glasses, she can actually make the glasses. I would think that if you grab the glasses, that they wouldn't actually be made of glass, they would just appear. I don't know. It was kind of weird. I almost remember thinking, like, if Wolverine cut her claws, it should have been like cutting an extension of her body. So like chopping fingers off. But yeah, you're right. It just worked. Yeah, it didn't really work right. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to kind of go with the battle at the Empire State Building. The Statue of Liberty.
So memorable, you couldn't even remember the location.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like that was sort of the moment where the shine was really kind of coming off. The bloom was coming off the rose, and I was saying to myself, boy, this is shockingly boring. I mean, literally, I'm watching them just fight in this room, and they're getting thrown over tape. Like, just one table of souvenirs after another is falling over. And I'm kind of going, this is really where it's kind of starting to show that it's pretty low budget. So yeah, I'll go with that one. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot of other little things that I can sort of pick at, but that's the one I'll kind of go with.
I'm going to give you that one easily. Originally, it was supposed to be a battle of them going up the interior of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
To get to the top. That was the original idea.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
Right. Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, honestly, it's funny. Like, I mean, like, you can tell because of budget restraints, like they're fighting in the lobby for 20 minutes and then suddenly they're in the tippy top. They're in the torch, the crown, right? And I'm like, yeah, come on, guys. Like, yeah, it really is clunky. But again, they're doing the best they can with what they got.
And how about for your consideration, sir?
I'm going to go kind of with an obvious one and just pick out the casting of Patrick Stewart as Professor X, which, again, I kind of feel like, when you were around that time growing up and reading comics and Patrick Stewart was a fixture on Star Trek, you kind of went, that guy was born to play Charles Xavier. So,
yeah.
I will give it to them for that smart bit of casting.
I grant you that, sir. For me, as much as this production had issues, I kind of feel like they hit the lottery in Hugh Jackman. I feel like, for a last-minute replacement, not everybody's first choice, but having to do it because time constraints and so on and so forth. The man, unlike a lot of other people, the man embraced it. Like some people, at the time, people would be like, yeah, well, comic book movie, it's a paycheck. There was that type of disdain at the time. Jackman wasn't like that. Jackman was like, yeah, when I insisted about the cigar and everything like that and wanted to make sure that at some point he called him Bub and everything like that because Wolverine's like that. Like, he really did embrace the character and grew into the character like nobody's business. And for that, I got to give the movie credit for that. I mean, Dumb Luck turned into, a incredible franchise torchbearer.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. See, it's funny because I've always sort of, and I think we briefly talked about this back when we were doing Logan. I've always sort of had kind of a mixed feeling about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I kind of felt like it was great casting in the respect that they found a great actor. You know, they found a great actor who was very willing to put himself in the role. And I specifically said when we talked about Logan, I felt like when I watched Logan, that was the first time I genuinely felt like I saw the Wolverine that I knew. And again, when we're watching this original X-Men, like I said, I feel like I'm watching kind of teen heartthrob version of Logan. You know, again, I hope when they do recast this character, again, you said that they're going to have some big shoes to fill. That's for damn sure, because again, Hugh Jackman is a great presence. He's a great actor, and he puts his heart and soul in everything he does. And he's a people person. Like, he's very, you know, I know people who've gone to see him in plays where he's very approachable and very nice. I hope when they redo the character and they recast him for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I hope they go for less handsome, more short, stocky, not very handsome, and a little more rough around the edge, right? A little more Logan from the movie Logan, and less, you know, Hugh Jackman from the first X-Men. You know, again, don't go for handsome, go for functional, go for a Han Solo, go for a rogue character who is not going to be the main character, but somebody who just makes it very fascinating. I mean, he should be more Quint from Jaws, you know, frankly. I almost think that'd be even a better comparison than Han Solo, really. You know, somewhere in there. You know, he's a supporting character who brings a lot of color and flavor, but not to the character you follow down the Yellow Brick Road, you know, as far as story goes.
You know what? I'll agree with that. I hope they do. With Feige at the helm, who knows? He might actually, and Sarah Hawley, you know, who we've given credit to in the past, maybe we'll finally get the Wolverine we've always deserved.
Well, there you go. Let's say, let's hope. Fingers crossed.
All right, and thus we start a whole new series, and oh boy, this one's going to be a fun series.
Yeah, a lot of ups and downs here.
Yeah. Now this is also a very weird schedule that we're doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, you need to kind of bear with us because the movie schedule, we had things scheduled, and then the movie schedules changed. So we tried to, you know, add here, subtract there, and so on and so forth. You know, this is episode 119. Originally, it was going to be Brightburn. We're not doing Brightburn now because we couldn't, but we're going to get to Brightburn. Don't worry about it. Because next week's still on the schedule, and next week I'm seriously looking forward to. Seriously looking forward to. And so should you, Joe, because next week is Godzilla, King of the Monsters!
Definitely looking forward to that one.
Oh, God, I'm so waiting. Yes, but then eventually we're gonna get back to the X-Men. All right? It's a weird digression. We started with the first one. We're gonna go off. We're going to do Godzilla, then we're going to do Dark Phoenix, then we're going to do Brightburn, then we're going to do the rest of the X-Men. With a pit stop in between to do Spider-Man. So, sorry folks.
It's a busy summer, which is a good problem to have, I think.
I hate that we have to see Godzilla and Brightburn. Well, I hate to see Dark Phoenix. I'm really, really not looking forward to that, to be honest with you.
I'm looking at that one with just a sense of morbid curiosity.
That's a very, very nice way of putting it there, Joe.
There you go.
Until then, ladies and gentlemen, Joe, thank you very much for being so accommodating, and have a safe trip.
Thank you for being accommodating, and I will talk to you when I get back.
Take care.
Have a great one. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.